Hey guys, myself Sampath Kumar, and in this video I'm going to start a new series. The series is to revise the entire direct tax in English, and which is relevant for May 21 and November 21 examination. So I request each one of you to please share with your friends so that it comes to the light of everyone. So let's start. Coming to the first section. The first section is short title, extent and commencement. So short title ka matlab this is an act, right? Someone has to name it. So the name is the Income Tax Act 1961. The Income Tax Act 1961. So whenever you're writing in an examination, you should write completely as per this section of the Income Tax Act 1961. You should not simply writing as per income tax. This is a treatment. Even if you don't know the section number also, it's fine. But when you are referring to an act, you refer it with the complete name that is given in the section itself or in the act itself. That is short title. The Income Tax Act 1961 is a short title here. Extent. So when I say extent, it means that for whom it is applicable. So the Income Tax 1961 is applicable to the whole of India, including Jammu and Kashmir. So there can be a question including Jammu and Kashmir. So there can be a question on a bit mark the Income Tax Act applicable to whole of India, including Jammu and Kashmir, or excluding Jammu and Kashmir, or some other permutation and combination. So the answer is including Jammu and Kashmir. Commencement. So when I say commencement, it is starting from which date? That is 1st of April 1962. So don't make this mistake. It is not 1st April 1961. It is 1st April 1962. That is the assessment year. Okay. So in examination, if they give the bits, don't write 1st April 1961. It is rather 1962. Right. So that sums up the section number 1. And definitions in income tax, we have a lot of definitions. We don't have to read all the definitions, or we don't have to mug up for that sake. For intermediate level, there are certain definitions which will be frequently asked. If you can get yourself familiarized with that sections or the content of the sections, that is sufficient. You don't expect, or institute doesn't expect you to be writing the definition as it is in the examination. So don't waste your time in reading the definitions to remember it. Just to read it to understand it. Okay, so there is a slight difference. So definitions will be talked in section 2. We will not be dealing all the definitions, only the definitions which are relevant. I have listed down whatever is relevant for other heads. Like we have salary, we have PGPP, income from house property, capital gain, other source, right? So wherever we require definition, that definition I have taken, so that it limits our focus on the areas which are relevant for examination, not like the entire picture. Fine, we will do that, the section 2 also. Coming to the previous year. So whenever we say previous year, it means the period during which the income has been earned. So I'll take an example of Finance Act 2019. So my year starts from 1st April 2019 to 31st March 2020. So this is my previous year. I mean to say it's a previous year, which means this is a period during which I earned some income that will be taxed in my assessment year, that is 1st April 2020 to 31st March 2021. Okay. So it's just the example of here. It can be, after 5 years also, whenever you have to go to what is your previous year and what is your assessment year, you have to understand that the previous year is a period during which you have earned the income. Okay, it is not you are paying tax. It's only during that period you are earning the income, but eventually you are paying tax in the next year, that is your assessment year. Okay, so that small thing you need to keep in mind. And one more point, assessment year and previous year are always different for us. If you take the Finance Act of 2020 example, I'm giving just an example to make you understand the basics of it. 1st April 2020 say 31st March 2021 is your previous year. 1st April 2021 say 31st March 2022 is your assessment year. So it's always your assessment and the previous year not matching. It's like coming into two different slots, right? But there are certain exceptions, and this exception is very possibly might come in your examination. What I mean by that, income earned in the previous year will be taxed in the previous year itself. Like this is my previous year. Now 1st April 21 say 31st March 22. This is my previous year right now. So I am doing certain activities which are raising suspicions to the assessing officer. So instead of me paying tax in the next year, assessing officer will ask me, Sampath, you need to pay tax now only because I doubt you might escape with the tax. Okay, so whenever it appears to the assessing officer that the assessee might do something by which he might escape the tax, then the previous year itself will become the assessment year. So there are 5 situations. We will go to those 5-6 situations. Section 172, shipping business of a non-resident. So there is a non-resident, there is a shipping company, which is registered in some other country. You take any example other than India. So that company, what they are doing is that they are transporting goods to India, or some passengers or some livestock, or maybe they are taking some goods from India to some other country. So either it is coming into India or going out of India, they are touching the territorial waters of India, right? So the moment they are touching the territorial waters of India, it means that their income has been accrued in India, they have to pay tax in India. So this much we have understood. Now the point is that is a non-resident shipping company. Today it is coming and it is unloading all the goods or passengers or livestock. It's fine, they're taking the fees and they're going. We don't even know when that ship will come. We don't even know from where it is coming. We have absolutely no idea. So for that purpose, this section says that, hey, if you are a non-resident shipping company, for you to let go from my country, first you need to settle your tax liabilities. In simple words, I will not give him the permission to leave the port in India until he makes the payment in India. Is it true, sir? Yes, it's true. For a non-resident shipping company, they have to make the payment then and there itself, then they have to move it. Sir, is it possible all the time? It might not be possible. For that reason, they will be appointing an agent or a representative person in India, or maybe a kind of an office, through which they will say that, okay, this person is liable or responsible for on my behalf. At the end of the year, he will be filing the return of income. So that is also fine. And either you pay it now, or you make satisfactory arrangements to the satisfaction of the assessing officer, then you can leave. Okay, but we will not go that level because it's all at a final level. But for intermediate non-resident shipping company, for it to leave from India, they need to make the payment before leaving. Okay, and the next one is persons leaving India. So now this is April, I'm conducting some classes here, I'm collecting some money here, it's my fees, or maybe I'm doing some work, I'm collecting some fees from my clients, that is my income. So what I'm doing is, at the end of this month, I want to go to US and settle there itself. So if this happens, if this comes to the knowledge of the assessing officer, he will say that, Sampath, I can see that you are going, but I don't see there is any intention that you will come back to India very soon. See, if I'm going there for a visiting purpose, or to meet some of my friends, or for some business meet, I will come back in 1 month or 2 months, something like that, or maybe to meet someone. But I'm going there to reside there permanently. I have no intention to come back to India. What assessing officer will say to me is, Sampath, you have earned some income for the first month, so you have to make the payment you have to settle your tax liability in this month only, now only. I will not wait for 12 months. See, at the end of the year, I might come, I might not come. So income tax doesn't want to be at a receiving end. Instead, income tax doesn't want to keep waiting when this person will come, then I'll ask tax. No, before you leaving only, you pay the tax. Okay, so this is a person's leaving India. Section 174A, assessment of AOP, BOI, AJP formed for a particular event or a purpose. So it's like now I'm into my own practice. So me, along with few of my friends, we have started a partnership firm. It's not a registered partnership. It's just like a association of 4 people for completing a task. We have a client, we have a project. That project requires 4 people, 4 chartered accountants. I'm only one person, so I'm taking the help of 3 of my other friends. So 4 of us are coming together to work on that assignment or work on that project. The moment it gets over, we will be dissolving it. Our intention is not like we are partners for life, not like that. Our relationship is for next 4 months we will be working together in a team. We listen to each other. Whatever the profit that we get out of this assignment, we will share it among ourselves. So this is our oral kind of agreement, right? So now we know that this AOP or BOI is only for a limited period. Assessing officer will not wait for us to just dissolve and keep sending notices to different people for asking the money. So what they say is, I know you people came just for a short period of time, your purpose is done, now you make the payment, then you can do whatever you want. So the income earned in the previous year, income earned in the year itself, they are asking me to pay the tax. So you can observe all these things, not like I'm repeating this point. Shipping business, in the previous year only you have to make the payment. Persons leaving India, whenever I am leaving, that year only I have to make the payment. I need not wait for the assessment year. Assessment of AOP, BOI, BOI, AJP. This is also when it is formed for a limited period of time. The moment it is getting dissolved, you need to make the payment. I will not wait for the year to end and then the assessment year to start. And persons likely to transfer property to avoid tax. So there is a raid in one person's house and he is caught with some black money, or he has some undisclosed income or undisclosed investment, or maybe he is disclosing, or maybe he is giving some explanation, but that is not satisfactory to the assessing officer. So then the assessing officer says that, I know you are caught with some gold, some property. If I leave you now, what you will do, you will transfer this property to your kith and kin, and then you will avoid the tax. So I will see, first of all you are caught. I cannot give you more time to make all illegal arrangements. I know there is a mistake from your side. You have to make the payment now itself. If I wait for few more months, why few 4 months? It's like maybe if I wait for 1 week, he will make some arrangements wherein he will transfer the property to his relatives and friends and all those people. Okay, so that for that purpose, this section is coming in to say, whenever a person is transferring property not at a fair market value, not at a genuine transaction, it's just to avoid the tax, then I'll ask that person to pay the tax in that year itself. And then coming to the last one, discontinued business, which means that I am running this business for last 10 years. Example, so last 10 years I am running this business, I want to discontinue this, I want to go to some other practice, I want to go to some other business, or I want to go to some other country. Okay, so when I'm discontinuing, what I will do, we have studied in liquidation chapter as well. So in my balance sheet, whatever the assets that I have, I will be selling in the market, and whatever the amount I get, I will be settling to all my liabilities in certain order. Okay, we will not talk about that order now. So this is what I do, right? So if I'm discontinuing in the current year, I'm selling all my assets, and whatever the money I'm getting, I'm discharging all my liabilities. So if this has to happen, what I would do, I will settle all my liabilities, but I will never pay the income tax, because by that time everything is vanished. There is no head office, there is no corporate office, there is no branch office, there is no AD, MD, CEO, there is nobody to ask also. Once it is discontinued, everything is dispensed off. There is nothing to take into the custody also for them, for the income tax people. So what they say is, when your business is discontinuing, you need to pay the tax in the year of the discontinuing itself. So why I spend so much time is that this could be a probable 5 marks question. So these are the exceptions to the rule that the income earned in the previous year will be assessed in the assessment year, which means for these 5 situations, income will be taxed in the year in which it is earned. So that is our previous year. And coming to the charge of income tax. So for every head we have a charging section. For salary we have a charging section. For house property we have a charging section. For PGBP we have a charging section. Capital gain, one charging section. Other source, there is a charging section. So for everything, not just in income tax, even for the GST also there is a charging section. Which that's the reason why faculty keeps telling you that you need to understand the charging section. Like that, the income tax itself has given a charging section that if at all you have to collect the tax from the people, it has to be either their salary head, or it has to be from house property, or it has to be from their PGBP, It has to be from their capital gain, or it has to be from other income from other source. If you cannot prove that their income is not falling under any of these 5 heads, you will not be paying the income tax. Okay, so assessee keeps trying this thing. Okay, this is not under salary, this is not under PGBP, this is not under other source, so I'll not pay tax. Okay, so put it simply, the charging section says that these are the 5 heads of income you need to take into consideration, and you also have the clubbing provisions, set off and carry forward, and chapter 60 deductions, TDS and everything. Okay, so this is just giving a broad picture as to what could be your income. Then we go to scope of total income. Before we understand the scope of total income, we need to understand the residential status. Residential status is calculated separately for individual, separately for HUF, separately for AOP, BOI, AGP, okay, and separately for firm, separately for company. Okay, so we have different rules to calculate the residential status, and that section detailed topics will be covering in the upcoming sessions. But here our intention is not just to cover the residential status, because that will be boring if you have already done the chapter. Okay, that is not in the our portfolio for this session. But while calculating your residential status, there are maximum 3 possibilities that you will get. One is either you can be ROR, you can be RNOR, or you can be NR. So these are the 3 maximum categories that you will fall into. If I'm an individual now, obviously I'm an individual, so I will be ROR, resident but ordinarily resident and ordinary resident. If I'm like meeting some conditions and not meeting certain conditions, I'll be RNOR. And if I'm not meeting any of the basic conditions, I will become non-resident. Okay, so now understand the point. Yes, we have segregated people into these 3 different categories. Then what that point is coming now? Because when you see this scope of total income, he will say if it is in India, if any income is coming in India, then what is the situation? If any income is coming outside India, what will be the situation? What do you mean by that? If it is accrued in India or deemed to be accrued in India, there are 2 limbs to it. Accrued in India or arisen in India, or deemed to accrue in India or arisen in India. So if it is accrued or deemed to be accrued, it will be taxable for all the 3 people, irrespective of where the income is accruing, irrespective of for which company it is been accrued, or in which currency you are taking, or where the transaction is taking place. I am not in a mood to listen to any of the things. The moment it is accrued in India or it is deemed to be accrued in India, it will be taxable for all the 3 categories. Sir, what do you mean by the deemed to be accrued in India? For that we have a section of section 9. Right? Accrued in India, like I am working for a company which is located in Hyderabad. So maybe I am working for you in US, I am receiving amount in US dollars, I am working on a project which is a US company, everything is US, but the company for which I am working is an Indian company, so it is accrued in India. Irrespective of anything else, the moment it is accrued in India, you have to pay tax in India. You're getting? Or maybe there is a foreign company and they have an employee who is coming into India just to do some work here for some 10 days. Okay, the company for which he is working is a non-resident, and the amount he is receiving is in also US dollars. Maybe client is also maybe US person, but still the work is being done in India. So that is called deemed to be accrued in India. Right? So we will go to that section also. Section 9 is like a little operative section. In the next session, we will be talking about this section 9 also. So coming to our point, accrued in India, all cases taxable, because I expect 5 marks from this content. Every time there is a question on this, they will be giving like there is a business in Sri Lanka controlled from Dubai, received in India. So you don't have to you don't have to get confused over there. The only thing is it received in India? Yes, taxable. Is it accrued in India? Yes, taxable. That's it. Forget about everything else. If it is received in India, taxable all. Accrued in India, taxable all. Yeah. So come back to my point. accrued in India, taxable in all cases. Deemed to be accrued in India, taxable in all cases. We'll go to the next one. Received in India or deemed to be received in India. What do you mean by that? Received in India, like in money terms, I'm receiving in India. Me or whoever it may be, they are receiving in India. So the moment they are receiving in India, it is taxable for all cases. Then what do you mean by the deemed to be received in India? For that we have a section of section 7. Right? Deemed to be accrued in India, for that we have a section of 9. Deemed to be received in India, for that we have a section of 7. So that says that if your employer is contributing in your PF provident fund more than 12%, then that will be deemed to be received in India. I am working for a company, I am working really well, so employer wants to compensate me more. Yes, he can compensate, but only up to 12%, there is no tax for me. Beyond 12%, whatever the employer is contributing in my name, that will be deemed to be received in India. Getting? The same way, out of employer's contribution and out of my contribution, like employers and employees both contribution, we will be depositing in a PF fund. That PF fund will be giving interest. If that interest happens to be more than 9.5%, that is also deemed to be received in India. You're getting? Employer is contributing more than 12%, that is again deemed to be received in India. Employers plus employees amount, on that they are getting we are getting an interest, and that interest happens to be more than 9.5%, then that will be deemed to be received in India. And the third one will be amount transferred from unrecognized provident fund to recognized provident fund, that will be treated as deemed to be received in India. We have a logic, and I'm not here to explain the logic, but it's just to revise it. First one is principal portion 12%, second one is 9.5% interest portion, third one is transfer from unrecognized to recognized. So we say this is all received in India. Sir, what is the bottom line that you want to draw here? The bottom line is, the moment it is accrued in India or deemed to be accrued in India, everybody is paying tax. That's it. The moment you are using Indian resources. And one more thing is outside India, like we are doing something, but it is not coming from India, it's outside India. So it is controlled from India. Only first two people will pay, not the third one. Like, we'll take one example of Joe Biden is coming now. Maybe he's not yet come, but he is coming for 2 days. Maybe he has a business in US only. For 2 days he is conducting business from here. For that, do you ask him to pay the tax, old tax in India? No, right? So though it is controlled from India, but it is a non-resident, so we will not ask him to make the payment, but these two people has to pay. Like commentator, you take an example like Bradley, an example for an IPL, he keeps coming, no? If he happens to be RNOR and he's having a business in Australia, but is covering or is controlling from India, so then he has to make the payment in India also, because he's controlling from India. But again, you have DTAA, that is all at a final level. He can take credit and all. Yeah. Any other situation, only first one will pay, not the remaining two. Sir, tell me in one word, ROR is making the payment for his global income. If we and you, everybody is an ROR here, we have to make the payment for the worldwide income. I get some fees from US, I get some fees from Dubai. Okay, maybe one of my student is there, or maybe Nepal. For that also I need to make the payment here only. Right? So this is your scope of total income. Residential status also I have not covered in depth, because it is understood that you have come to know by now. We have basic conditions, we have additional conditions. Basic conditions में 180 days आपको रहना चाहिए. If you cannot fulfill that, you have another option, that is 60 days or 60 days plus 365 days out of 4 previous preceding years. दोनों में like you need to fulfill either of the one condition there. If you fulfill one condition, you will become a resident, and again you will have an additional condition. Additional condition में you have to fulfill both the condition. If you fulfill both the condition, you will become ROR. If you fulfill only one condition, you will become RNOR. If you fail to fulfill both the basic condition, you will become NR. Okay. Yeah. And coming to the next one, agricultural income. So when I say agricultural income, this point is a little bit important, because we have an exemption also, 10(1). What it says is, I have a land in my village and I am using it for agricultural purpose. So either I am cultivating on my own, or I am using the labor of someone else still it is an agricultural income. Or maybe I'm giving that land for someone else and who is using for agricultural purpose, still it is an agricultural income for me and I'll not be paying tax on it. I'll repeat, either I'm using or someone else is using, but for the purpose for which it is being used, it is an agriculture, that has to be intact. And one more thing, the place of the land plays a major role. What I mean by that, if the land is situated within the urban area, I mean I'm using one word, urban area, then what they say is it is not agriculture. I mean, you should not be getting benefit out of it. You should not be getting it. You can get it if it is like situated far from your city, then you can say it's an agricultural land. But if it is like, in Hyderabad, I have a land here, I cannot say that it's an agricultural land. It is a non-agricultural land. You have to pay capital gain tax on it. Okay, you have to treat it as if it is not an agricultural land. So how do we find out? So this is a rule you need to by heart, but I'll just give one example. I will give example from my place where I'm taking class now. This is a cantonment or municipality. If it is a cantonment or a municipality and the population is up to 10,000, so you can say within the limits of the cantonment or municipality, whatever the land is situated, that place is called specified area. First of all, I'll repeat, my cantonment or my municipality, within this municipality and within this cantonment, if there is any land situated, that is a specified land, okay, specified area. And if there is a land in it, that is called non-agricultural land. Okay, but if the population of the cantonment or the population of the municipality is more than 10,000 up to 1 lakh, one radius. So if the population is really more, they want to increase the area, like that is measured aerially from like this. I will keep looking around 360 degrees. I will go 2 kilometers from here. And if the population is even more, then I will go 6 kilometers radius. If the population is even more, I will go 8 kilometers radius. Okay, so 10,000 to 1 lakh, 1 lakh to 10 lakh, 10 lakh and above, just by heart purpose only. But understand the meaning, then you have to by heart. That is anyway that, see, if you understand the concept, but if you don't remember this 2 kilometers, 6 kilometers and 8 kilometers, and you write up some other number, obviously your answer will be wrong. Okay, so both have to be there. One is to understand properly for the first time. Second is to keep remembering or revising it. 2, 6, 8. 2 first, 6 uska baad mein, then 8 kilometers. Okay, if your land is happens to situated in the this outer limits, then we can say that is a specified area and it is not an agricultural land. And we have block of assets ka concept. Sir, why that concept is coming here? Because that will be useful when you are solving your PGBP. So while you are solving PGBP, you need to calculate the depreciation. Section 32, we will talk about that. And again, you will be solving the WDB 43.6. So there are multiple places where you will be using your block of assets concept. So now we have to understand what you mean by that block of assets. Block of assets ka matlab, you have multiple assets. Like now I am taking classes here. I have furniture. I have a camera. I have my own vehicle. I have a board. Okay, I have a laptop or a computer. Okay, so all other equipments. So now I need to see which item falls under what category. So this will be determined by saying that you create multiple blocks, but make sure that each block has a same kind of an asset and same kind of a rate. So the nature has to be same plus percentage of depreciation has to be same. Sir, what do you mean by this? Give an example. I have a car, hypothetically. I have a car. So the car will fall into one category and I have another car which I am using it for transport purpose. I am giving to some goods transport agency or some traveling agency. Okay, so car is same, the brand is same. Okay, brand is same, but the purpose for which I am using will determine the rate at which I will be depreciating it. If it is a car, I am using it for myself, the depreciation rate will be 15%. Or 30% if it is purchased between certain date, that also will come back. But if the same car I'm using it for my transport purpose, the depreciation rate will be 30% or 45%. Getting? don't go into the percentages now, understand the point. The block has to be have the same nature of items plus same percentage of depreciation. Clear? I have a building. Okay, one building my employees are using as a quarters or for residential accommodation, and there is another building I am using it for hospitality. I mean, like I'm giving on a rent basis, OU for an example. So I cannot say both are same block. It has to be a different block. It has to be a different block. Yes, maybe same building, but the purpose for which I'm using the building is different. It will attract different rate. It's a 5%. Here it's 10%. Get? Yeah. So we will go to the next definition. As I told you in the beginning itself, we will be understanding few definitions. I know we don't have to mug up, but still there are certain definitions. You cannot oversee these definitions. You cannot go beyond this section. No? You cannot forget these sections. You have to understand these sections and then only you move further. So capital gain chapter mein, like we will be using this capital asset ka definition very clearly. If I am using for my own business, that has to be a property of any kind. Property of any kind. Okay. So property of any kind ka matlab, like it can be tangible, it can be intangible, it can be goodwill, anything will come here. And security is held by a FII. So foreign institutional investor, he is investing in shares of the Indian company. So you can say for them it is a stock. So when it is a stock, here in one of the definitions they say that stock in trade is excluded from the definition of capital asset. See, this first part is saying stock in trade cannot be your capital asset. See, I have a shop here. The shop is to purchase some items and sell that items. Like I have a computer shop. I purchase laptops, I purchase computers, and I sell computers. That is my business. So purchasing and selling of laptop is my stock in trade. So that is not a capital asset. I will not be paying tax of capital gain. No capital gain on the assets or the laptops that I am selling. You are very clear, right? That is my business. So I will be paying tax on the business income. Like PGBP mein I will do it. Very clear. But for FII, they are holding investment in Indian companies as a stock in trade. Then why are you calling it as a capital asset? Because government has decided to pump up more capital from the foreign countries. We will give a benefit of saying that this is also capital asset for you. So when it is a capital asset for them, their rate of taxation will be lesser. So they will be more encouraged to come to India and invest. Yeah. So come back to it. Your capital asset can be of any property of any kind, or it can be any security of FII. It's not ours. And then does not include. So the capital asset definition does not include the below items, which means on the sale of these things or on the transfer of these things, you will not be paying the capital gain tax. What are they? Stock in trade. Stock in trade cannot be your capital asset, so you will not pay tax on that. And personal effects, like you have something that you are wearing, like your shirt, your watch, something that you are using it as a personal effects, that is also not a capital asset. But having said that, the below items are exclusion of the personal effects. So what do you mean by that? Which means these are all capital assets. These items, whatever we are going to discuss from now, will be out of the purview of the personal effects, which means that will become a capital asset. What are they? You have a jewelry here. So when you are selling it, like gold biscuits, it's all your jewelry, it's all your capital asset. Archaeological collections, you have something from your past which is more precious, you are trying to sell it. So don't say it's my personal effect, it is a capital asset. Drawings, if you are good at drawing, when you sell the drawing, don't say it's my personal error, mera khud ka hai, like I tried on my own, why should I say it's a capital asset? No, it's a capital asset. Paintings, sculptures, work of any art, these are all capital assets. And agricultural land in India is not a capital asset as long as it is not situated in specified area. Just now we were discussing like this goal and then 2 kilometers, 6 kilometers, 8 kilometers. So if it is situated somewhere beyond that 8 kilometers, take an example, then it is not a capital asset. But if it is situated anywhere between this area, assuming the population is more than 10 lakhs, then it is a specified area that will be a non-capital asset, non-agricultural land, which means that's a capital asset. Sir, in our simple में बोले तो, if you are having any asset in this area, that will become a capital asset. If you are having any land here, that will become non-capital asset. Okay. And charitable purpose, so this section is more relevant for final students, but still I would say, because we can expect some 1 or 2 marks here. So when you say charitable purpose, like these people are coming to coming up with an idea that they want to do something for the society. So some kind of related to poor, education, yoga. Remember, even yoga is also charitable purpose. Somebody is starting yoga in your place, so they can get a saying that, oh no, I am a charitable institution because my main objective is charitable purpose. Okay, medical to poor, preservation of environment, preservation of monuments, or advancement of any other objects. Okay, so here the basic point is these 3 are specific. See, first 3 limbs, like first 3 points, 1, 2, 3, they are very specific as to what you have to do. So if you are doing this, along with that, if you are doing any business which is incidental or auxiliary to the main objectives, it's fine. There is one person who is doing yoga as his main objective, but to pursue that objective, he is also starting to sell some items relating to yoga, kind of mat or some items relating to our tradition. So he can say that even that business is also relating to relating to your charitable purpose. Then he'll say it's my trust. I will be covered under certain section. Section also we will not talk because it's all final level. He would say that it's not a business. It is not my PGBB because this I am doing in order to get enough revenue for me to pursue my main objective of providing relief to the poor or yoga or medical relief, whatever. So that is the reason why when people come up as a trust, they also start a business and they say the business is incidental or auxiliary to the object of attaining of the main business. Okay, so that's it. But coming to the last one, advancement of any other object, which means that the law is not telling you what to do. They are telling you do whatever you want to do it, but that has to be for the betterment of the society. So it's not a specific, it's like general. No, so these people should not do any business. The fourth point wala, if you are starting any business, any charitable purpose, but that is not specified in 1, 2, 3, still you can do that, but don't do the business. But if you feel that the business is also must for me to get the revenue, make sure that the receipts are not more than 20%. Okay, that's it. Everything else will be at a final level. And coming to the person's definition, so when income tax talks, they say that every person, they keep saying every person, they will not say individual. See, I am an individual, you are an individual, like all natural persons are individuals, but the law wants to have a like more coverage of it. So they say only person, but person includes an individual like you and me, HUF, a family, and the Hindu undivided family, a company, ICICI Bank, Reliance, these are all person only. You will be like surprised to see that even Tata is also a person. Reliance, Jio is also a person. Okay, it's a person from the eyes of the law. Firm is also a person. AOP, BOI, local authority, artificial judicial persons not falling under the above category will all become your person. So you are not expected to remember the definitions as it is, but what you are expected to do is to say that I have read it, I have understood it, so that I can apply this logic in the main problems. So that is the reason why whenever I take sections, I focus more on the definition part, charging section part, so that you will get yourself ready. And coming to relative, so relative is also required when we are doing this income from other sources, like if I'm transferring to you for without consideration or for inadequate consideration and the gap is more than 50,000, it has to be chargeable under the income from other sources. That's what we read when we go to that chapter. But now if I'm giving that to my relative, it is not, it's an exception. So I will not be paying tax, or he will not be paying tax. Right? So then now the law wants to have a view as to what do you mean by relative. Relative, there has to be a definition, right? I cannot say all my family members are my relative. So the relative ka matlab spouse, like if it's a female, husband, male, wife, brother, sister, or any lineal ascendant or descendant of that individual. Okay, so ascendant above that family, above that person, descendant below that person's, like son, grandson, something like that. So short-term capital asset, we need to understand this for the capital gain chapter. Short-term capital asset is 36 months, but there is an amendment. The amendment is that if you are trading in shares like these things, it is only 12 months. Okay, what do you mean by that? A security listed in a recognized stock exchange in India. So I am purchasing a security of a Reliance, so that their share is being listed in a recognized stock exchange. So if I am holding it for 12 months or and more, then that will become a long term. I will be getting a different benefit. We will talk about that also. There will be different rate of tax for that, and units of UTI, equity oriented fund, zero coupon bonds. For all these things, the period of holding should be 12 months or less. Then we say it's a short term. But if I am trading in a share, or if I am purchasing and selling a share, and the period of holding is not 12 months, it is more than 12 months, but the share I am trading or the purchasing is not listed in a recognized stock exchange. Take an example. One of my friends recently started a company. He said that he wants to have some contribution from my side. So I bought some 20% stake of all his shares. Like he has some 100 shares. Out of 100 shares, I bought 20 shares. His shares are not listed anywhere. It's just for MCA purpose. He has taken me as a promoter or 20% stake. So now, for this to call it as a short term, it has to be more than 24 months. For a listed share, it's only 12 months, but for unlisted share, it is 24 months. Okay, so keep that into mind. And coming to the slum sale, this is also required for us in capital gain chapter. So slum sale ka matlab, I have units in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore. I want to sell one of my units to you. Okay, so when I'm selling, what you will be asking, Sampath, what is the value of asset? What is the value of the land? What is the value of the building? So you will be asking, right? Like if I say this is my balance sheet relating to my Chennai branch, Chennai office or unit, I can say. I have a land there, I have a building, I have a goodwill kind of thing or intangible, I have some liabilities, I have some debt, I have some bank loan, something like this, which are specific to that Chennai unit. And now I want to sell. I don't want to tell you what is the value I'm assigning to each building, what is the value I'm assigning to each land. I don't want to do that valuation like that we study at final level. We will not be giving valuation to each and every asset and each and every liability. I'll simply say I want to sell it for 50 lakhs. You are asking me how come 50? I don't know. If you are interested to pay 50 lakhs, you take 50 lakhs, give me 50 lakhs and take that unit, Chennai unit. So when I am transferring one of my units to the others without assigning values to each asset and liability, that is called a slum sale. We can expect some 10-mark question in capital gain chapter. So here we need to understand what you mean by slum sale also. Randomly I am selling slum sale. There is no value assigned to it. So transfer, this will come back to capital gain chapter mein, like what are the different instances where we call there is a transfer, like sale, exchange, relinquishment, extinguishment, compulsory acquisition. All these things will come back once again in the capital gain chapter. And previous year, we just now we have discussed it. Coming to the rates point of view, there is an amendment. I want your attention here. The rates are same like previous year. 0 to 2.5 lakh no tax, 2.5 to 5 lakh 5%, 5 lakh to 10 lakh 20%, 10 lakhs and above 30%. It's very simple. If I happen to be a person of more than 60 years and below 80 years, and if I happen to be a resident in India, then instead of 2.5 lakh it is 3 lakh and everything else will be same. If I happen to be a person of more than 80 years of age, I don't know if will I be surviving by that till that age. It is up to 5 lakh, there is no tax. 5 to 10 lakh, 10 lakhs and above. So only 20%, 30% bracket will be there. So this is straightforward. Just by looking at it, you will understand. The only point that you have to be like very sure is this second bracket here, like up to 3 lakh, he has to be a resident. If he has to be a non-resident, no, he will not get this. Yeah, but sir, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the amendment? Amendment is that instead of paying tax at such a higher rate, the act has provided me a facility. Facility is that you don't take some benefits. You take. I will tell you the sections. Don't take the benefits of those sections. You pay tax at a lesser rate. I'm not understood, sir. If you happen to be an individual, or if you happen to be a HUF, if you happen to be HUF or individual and you don't want to pay tax at these rates, you have an option, concessional rate. You should apply to me. If I'm the department, you should tell me that, sir, I don't want to go with the normal bracket, I want to go with a concessional rate. The concessional rate will say that when you're coming here, you should not take the benefit of some other sections that we will talk about. Don't get diluted there, but you will end up paying lesser tax. How? These are the taxes. Up to 2.5 lakh nil. There also, in the normal case also up to 2.5 lakh nil. Here also up to 2.5 lakh nil. 5 lakh to 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh 5%. There also 5%. Here also 5%. So here till here there is no difference. 5 lakh to 7.5. There it was 5 lakh to directly 10 lakh jump. 5 lakh to 10 lakh 20%. Here 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh only 10%. So that is a benefit. So for whom this will be beneficial? If your salary is less than 5 lakh, take an example, your salary is 40,000 per month, then there is no point in you are coming here or there, because anyway you are coming, you are getting into first these two categories only. But if your salary happens to be a 9 lakh, then it's better that you come to this thing. But you need to consider other things as well, like what are the benefits that you are getting. Yeah, so I'll come back to this. Up to 0.25 lakh both same, 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh both same, 5 lakh to 10 lakh 20% there. Here 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh it is 10%, and 7.5 lakh to 10 lakhs it is 15%. Okay, so there is a 5% increment, and then 10 lakhs to 12.5 lakh again 5% increment, 12.5 lakh to 15 lakh 25% increment. So this is the benefit that is given to an individual and HUF. That section is 115 BAC. Sir, how do I remember this? You have to remember there are like amendments like BAA, BAB, BAC, BAD. So there are 4 amendments. These 2 are relating to PGBP. Like the first wala will be, instead of paying 30% tax, because for companies it is 30% flat rate, instead of paying it 30%, you can pay it 22% plus 10% surcharge plus 4% SS, right? Instead of 30%, you can pay 22%. Anyway, the other things will be same. Instead of 30%, you can pay 22%. Here BAB, for somebody who is into manufacturing of any article, or somebody who is into generation of electricity, distribution of electricity, for them it is 15%. 15%, again 10%, and this 4%. This will be continuing anywhere, but you have to remember the main thing: 22%, 15%, and this 10%, 4% will be same in either case. So what are you trying to say? That what I'm trying to say is 115 BAA and BAB are relevant for PGBP who wants to be taxed at a concessional rate. Okay, BAC is now what we are talking about for individuals and HUF. Instead of paying it 0.5 to 5, 0.0 to 2.5, 2.5 to 5, 5 to 20, 10 and above, there is a rate, no? Instead of that, if you want to be covered under this rate, you have to give a request to the assessing office or to the department saying that I want a concessional rate. Okay, so that is 115 BAC, and 115 BAD is for these societies, corporate societies. They will be paying it 22% plus 10% plus 4%. Okay, that we will come back to that also. Okay, so now what we have studied is, for an individual there are 3: 0 to 2.5, 0 to 3, 0 to 5, for depending upon the age. Okay, and the last 2, he has to be a resident, don't forget that. But if you want a lesser rate than that, for 115 BAC, which will let you to have a different slab rate, but that will prohibit you from taking the benefits of these sections. Standard deductions under the head salary you will not take. Interest on housing loan you will not take. Deductions under chapter 6A other than 80 CCD or 80 JJAA you will not take. So if your income having these deductions like salary mein like slab rate ka, लाइक स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन का, और इंटरेस्ट एलिमेंट भी आपको है, तो आई मीन लाइक पीपल से यू डोंट गो विद दिस कंसेशनल, बट यू डोंट हैव एनी सेल्फ ऑक्युपाइड प्रॉपर्टी, एंड योर salary content is also very small, and 80 JJ, like 80 chapter 6A में you don't have much deductions, like you are not invested properly in life insurance or health insurance or some here and there, so it's better that you go here so that you end up paying lesser tax. Okay, so that is for the individuals and HUF, whatever we are talked about so far. Coming to cooperatives, up to 10,000 you pay 10%, 10,000 to 20,000 you pay 20%, 20,000 and above you pay 30%, right? Up to 10,000 you pay 10%, 10,000 to 20,000 you pay 20,000. Doesn't mean that you will pay only 20%. It will be like cumulative, up to 10,000 ka or 10,000. Okay, so 10,000 बोल तो 1,000 plus, now whatever above 10,000 will be 20%, and for the third category 30%. But they have an option to go with the 22% plus 10% plus 4%. They have that possibility also, they can exercise that option also. Coming to the company, we will bifurcate into two companies. One is Indian company, that is a domestic company, and another is a foreign company. For a foreign company it is straight away 40%, but for an Indian company it is 30%, but they have an option. Just now we were talking about that 115 BAA, that is one option. Other than that, for the previous year 17 and 18, if his turnover is lesser than 400 crores, his gross receipts are lesser than 400 crores, he will be paying only 25%. Okay, so that is one option for them. For foreign companies it is 40%. And we have some special rates also. Keep focus on the special rates, it will be useful for your capital gain. Okay, so special rates, they have bifurcated something like this. These are all long term, 112 families for long term. 112A says that long term capital gain, you got it because of trading in equity or equity oriented fund or a business trust, and you have paid STT while purchasing and while selling. Okay, so you have paid the STT and you are trading only in the shares or equity oriented funds or business trust. Up to 1 lakh you don't have to pay tax. Beyond 1 lakh you will pay only 10%. I'll repeat, the long term capital gain you are getting, and that you are getting because of trading in shares or equity oriented funds or a business trust, and you have paid the STT. Up to 1 lakh you don't have to pay. Beyond 1 lakh you will pay only 10%. Same thing if it happens to be a short term, then you will come to this bracket, 111A. What is that bracket? Exactly same thing, 15%. Sir, I have not understood. I purchased a share of Reliance. I held it for 10 months and then I am selling it. Then the gain may I have to pay 15%. I am purchasing a share and I am transferring subsequently. The period of holding is not more than 12 months, which means it's a short term. I have paid, though I have paid STT and everything, because it's a short term, I end up paying 15% tax. But if I wait it for 12 months or more, then up to 1 lakh I will not pay tax. Beyond 1 lakh I will pay only 10%. So indirectly government is encouraging you to trade shares and everything, but not so frequently. You should be holding at least for 1 year so that it doesn't impact the everyday trading and all our economical policies and points. Getting trading in shares, short term 15% flat. Long term up to 1 lakh there is no tax. Beyond 1 lakh there is 10% tax. But coming to long term only, see, when I am saying long term, it doesn't mean that only shares I will trade. I have a land, I have a building, I have a furniture. So here it is 20%. Okay, so that is a thing. And coming to the short term, I told 15% flat. And other than these shares, see, for short term also I might have a short term capital gain on my land or my building or something else. okay, short term, not necessarily this equity oriented fund or business trust, then that will be as per the normal rates, not there is no specific rate for that. And coming to this 115 BB, the people who are having lot of money, they are going for the lottery and they are going for the crossword puzzles, race horses, card games and gambling. 30% flat, no deduction, no expenditure is allowed, 30% flat. Okay, 115 BBDA, this is the dividend received by a recipient. See, now I have invested in a company, they are declaring dividend, so I am receiving dividend up to 10 lakhs, I will not pay tax. Beyond 10 lakhs, I will pay 10%. Earlier, everything used to be exempt, but now people like all big industrialists or politicians, they are investing huge money in different companies. Their dividend is more than that dividend distribution tax that the company is paying. So indirectly, they are leaking the revenue. So that is the background. Put it simply, for a recipient, dividend up to 10 lakhs is not taxable. Beyond 10 lakhs, 10% it is taxable. BBE is like there is a raid on a person. He has unexplained cash or unexplained cash credit or unexplained investment or something that is not able to convince the assessing officer. He is not giving the explanation, or even if he is giving the explanation, but that is not at the satisfaction of the assessing officer, then he will say you pay 60% flat. And coming to the surcharge, you know, careful. Comes, you know, surcharge we have differently for individual. Zero to 50 lakh, 50 lakh and 1 crore, 1 crore to 2 crores, 2 crores and 5 crores. 5 crores and above. Here you will not pay any surcharge. Here it is 10%, 15%, 25%, 37%. Yes. Okay. So this is a surcharge applicable to an individual. But if it is for a firm or LLP, it is very simple. Up to 1 crore, there is no 10 crores to 1 crore to 10 crores. It is 12%. Yes, 12%. Up to 1 crore, it is nil. But coming to the company, there is a kind of a trickiness you have to understand. One is domestic, one is a foreign company. So again we have 3 slabs: 0, 7%, 15%, like up to 1 crore, 1 crore to 10 crores and 10 crores and above. Here for a foreign company, it is 0%, 2% and 5%. So you might ask, like, why the surcharge is lesser for the foreign company? Because already they are paying tax at a 40% rate, no? So our company, Indian company, we are paying only 30%. Sometimes we are paying only 25%. Okay, sometimes we are paying 22%. Sometimes we are paying only 15%, depending upon which concessional rate you are taking it. Okay, different parameters are there. So 15% BA, B, BAA, or if your turnover 17-18 ka beech mein your receipts are 400 crores or less, and rebate the up to 5 lakhs, like whoever is if a person has a resident, if a residential individual is having a total income of 5 lakh, up to 12,500 he can claim it. And education system, it's 4%. Marginal relief will be given if anybody's income has slightly exceeded it. So we have an example. I will quickly do it. There is a person whose total income is 51 lakh. So how do you calculate it? How do you calculate his tax liability? 0 to 2.5 lakh, nothing. 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh. So there is a 2.5 lakh and you will pay 5%. 12,500. 5 lakh to 10 lakh, you will pay 20%. So 5 lakh is 20%. So 1 lakh. 10 lakhs and above will pay 30%. So 10 lakhs and above bole to, like, his income is 51 lakhs, right? So there is a 41 lakhs in between the slab rate. 41 lakhs multiplied by 30%. So he'll be paying 12 lakh 30,000. So it will be 13 lakh 42,500. Then he'll pay surcharge also. So why is surcharge? Because his total income has exceeded 50 lakhs and he is an individual, for which it will be 10%. Below up to 50 lakhs there is no surcharge. 50 lakhs to 1 crore he'll pay 10%. So he will be paying 1,34,250. So indirectly he'll pay 10% more, 14,76,750. But here he will cry because his income has exceeded only 1 lakh after this 50 lakhs. Okay, had his income been only 50 lakhs, he would have been paying something like this: 0, 12,500, 1 lakh, and in this bracket it's only 40 lakh. You take it, multiplied by 30%. Don't remember like step 1, step 2, step 3 aisa. So he would have been paying only 13 lakh 12,500. Just because there is an increase of 1 lakh, he's spending how much more? 14 lakh 76,750 minus 13 lakh 12,500. Because his income is exceeding 1 lakh, is paying 1,64,250 more. So he's crying. See, I'm earning 1 rupee, I'm paying tax of 1.2 rupee. It's better that I would have not earned this rupee only. No, he's regretting why he has earned that money. So he wants that extra to be given as a relief. How that will be given? For 1 lakh, he's paying an additional amount of 1,64,250. So 64,250 will be given as a relief, and he will be paying tax only on this amount. 13 lakh 12,500 plus 1 lakh. So he'll pay 14 lakh 12,500 as his liability. So I hope you find the video helpful, and if you find it useful, let me know in the comment section, and please share it with your friends so that it will be encouraging for me to post the remaining videos. If nobody is watching, definitely I might not be posting it. I might not be posting on a consistent basis. So please share your thoughts, please share your opinion, your feedback, or share it with your friends as well. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.